Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Integrity Restored podcast. I'm Jim O'Day, your host, and I'm blessed to be joined today by Joseph Valentic. Joseph is the author of two books, The Warrior Prayer Manual and Becoming a Saint by Succeeding in Business. Joseph is obviously a Catholic author, entrepreneur, apostolate leader, husband, father, and grandfather who tries to incorporate his faith in all that he does. Great lesson for us all. Joseph, welcome to Integrity Restored podcast.
Thank you, Jim. It's truly a blessing to be here. God bless you in this ministry and all that you do because it's so essential. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming on. The topic that I wanted to cover today is kind of an amalgamation of both your books, I think. But the title I gave this show, Becoming a Saint, because that's what we're all supposed to be doing, whether it's in our business,
Amen.
in our families, in our communities. What is the path to becoming a saint? And so many of us, particularly if we're struggling with something, pornography addiction, for example, we feel really far from being a saint, like it's not even a possibility for us. So, Joseph, just a couple easy steps. What does it mean to become a saint?
So Saint Jose Maria Escriva has one of my favorite definitions. He said, a saint is a sinner that just keeps on trying. A saint is a sinner that just keeps on trying, okay? And he's one of my favorite examples and discussions of sainthood in a practical capacity because he calls out the reality that sometimes in the Catholic Church we tend to have this kind of saccharine, like super holy, pious picture when we talk about saints, and we forget to talk about how they got there, right? So one of the Church's greatest theologians of all time, St. Augustine, actually broke all 10 commandments on purpose, out of arrogance, out of pride. And he had one of the most significant addictions to sexual issues. Okay, that was one of his core issues, right? And he became one of the greatest theologians in the Church's history, right? So if he can do it, I think we all can.
Yeah. In the book, The Warrior Prayer Manual, to go to that for 1 second, and ladies and gentlemen, we'll have links to both books in the show notes. In that Warrior Prayer Manual, you have different prayers for every day, and it's geared towards men. And I think one of the problems is often when we think of saints, I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, Joseph, but they seem a little effeminate, a lot of the saints, how they're presented to us. Yet for a man, the path to sainthood really is a battle. Let's be honest. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's interesting. Probably 6 years ago, I went down a path where I actually joined a secular men's group because I couldn't find something in the Catholic Church that really addressed the fact that in my heart I had a warrior's call, but didn't know what to do with that, you know, and how do I integrate that with my faith, right? And what is authentic masculinity supposed to look like? And I went through this process of discernment, of seeing what laymen were doing to be the best they could be as fathers, husbands, and workers, you know? And after about a year in that, God kind of said, okay, you're done there now. Now let's come back to the Catholic Church, and now let's take what you've learned here and bring it here. And there's been this journey where I ended up starting a men's group, and the purpose of the men's group was for men that genuinely wanted to be saints, but who also had this warrior call in their heart. How do we live that in our faith? And we were very blessed to have a priest, a chaplain, come into the group early on, and he brought to us this remarkable prayer from the breviary of the Catholic Church, which is the prayer format that priests pray from 5 times a day. So basically anything in there is going to be deemed as this is what the church believes and teaches, right? And I'd love if you don't mind, Jim, to read a prayer from that bravery because I think it's just so appropriate. And this was the prayer that he gave us, right? The prayer begins and it says, "We are warriors now, fighting on the battlefield of faith, and God sees all that we do. The angels watch, and so does Christ. Let us arm ourselves in full strength and prepare ourselves for the ultimate struggle with blameless hearts, true faith, and unyielding courage. What honor and glory and joy to do battle in the presence of God and to have Christ approve our victory. Alleluia. Amen."
Amen.
So the church says we are warriors now, but there's been this effeminization over decades in the church. And so we have to bring back that license, that authority to tell men, yeah, it's okay to follow that warrior call in your heart, number one. Number two, as scripture tells us very clearly, we are living in a spiritual battle. Okay. The devil is a roaring lion seeking for the ruin of souls, and he's not going to stop until Jesus comes back again. So that means we're in the thick of the war, whether we know it or not. And so, by goodness, why don't we prepare for that and actually seek to be the warriors that God's calling us to be? So that was part of the genesis of this prayer manual. It literally came to me one night in prayer. I asked the Lord, I said, I have so much going on. What are you going to focus on? Instantly, compile and publish a warrior prayer manual for men. It was just like that clear. And lo and behold, after 2 years of working on this men's group, I had been compiling prayers and pictures and images that were authentically masculine Catholic, but also Marian, Eucharistic, and um, stories from the saints, meditations. Even female saints like Saint Faustina talks about being a warrior all the time. Saint
Yep.
Therese being warriors. Saint Catherine of Siena, Saint Bridget, right? So it's when you really dive into the truth of the saints, there's no lack of discussion of the fact that we're supposed to be warriors battling for the Lord.
And I think an important thing to remember is we talked before we started recording about St. Pio, who's near and dear to my heart and an incredible intercessor for us here on earth. I mean, incredible. And literally a 20th century saint, right? I mean, I was born when he passed away. It's not some saint from thousands of years ago. He wasn't perfect. And so many times, I think in the Catholic Church, we have this vision of the saints being these perfect human beings that were given some special grace, like they were sinless. No,
Mm-mm.
these were people who fought the same fights we're fighting, struggled through the battles. But as you said, they didn't give up, they kept
Yes,
fighting.
yes.
And so, in becoming a saint, your second book, by succeeding in business, you kind of give some steps. And could we make those steps a little more generic, just for somebody becoming a saint in their life? Could you take a
Mhm.
few minutes to kind of lay out a couple of those steps, Joseph?
Yeah, Jim. Yeah, Jim. So, I mean, one of the first and most important things is the decision to pursue sainthood. It's a decision. We don't become a saint by accident, okay? We actually have to choose to pursue that. Once we choose to pursue that, then, the essence of my business book is the reality that for those of us that don't wear a collar or habits and we're not in a religious life, our path to sainthood is actually in our daily vocation, our businesses, our careers, okay?
Our
And
family.
so, your families as well, correct. But so that means that we can't look at our career as something ancillary or just a tag along to our life. It actually has to be looked at as a core path to sainthood, right? And in the book, I draw heavily from the writings of Saint Jose Maria Escriva because he's kind of the master about this call and this integration of how do we integrate our faith life and our business life or our vocation together, right? And so the second step is to make that decision of I'm going to integrate these. I'm not going to leave my faith at the door when I come into the office. I'm not going to pretend I'm not Catholic where I'm at. But I'm also going to specifically and intentionally look at how do I use what's best in the church, the sacraments, prayer, the intercession of the saints, reading the
Mhm.
lives of the saints. How do I use these things to become the best I can be in business? The title of that book is a little tongue in cheek, and some people get a little irritated with it. They say, "Well, you can't equate success in business to sainthood," and it's like, I don't. Jesus does, because when you look at the parable of the talent, the parable of the gold coin, and the gold coin, he says, "Go forth and trade." And when the guy comes back with took his one coin and turned it into 10, Jesus says, "Congratulations, well done, good faithful servant. I now give you charge over 10 cities." I say to people that Jesus doesn't understand venture capitalism because he doesn't take his chips off the table. He doubles, triples down. He gives them more. Okay, so he recognizes the success. Conversely, the one who takes his coin and buries it and does nothing with it, he loses it, right? And I kind of equate that to the choice to being mediocre in our career, right? When we pursue I'm just going to get through my career, or I'm going to disconnect the faith and just pursue avarice and greed, etc., in my career, then I'm not generating the returns I should be for the Lord, okay, or the potential. So we need to pursue success to be saints, but ideally we can't pursue that success if we're not also using the great treasury of gifts that the church has given us, prayer, the sacraments, the saints, etc., right? The two, they come, the perfect path is integrated between those. So big picture, you have to intentionally choose it, seek how to integrate it into your whole life. You can't compartmentalize and pick and choose. And three, you have to trust in Jesus. You really have to trust the path and the plan. Um, that's good Saint Faustina. You talked earlier about the saints not being perfect. One of the blessings I had in my life was in the last couple of years, I read the diary of Saint Faustina, only a paragraph or two a day. It took me 2 years. And what amazed me over and over again is here's a saint who physically saw Jesus, saw the Blessed Mother, saw Saint Joseph, saw Archangel Michael, saw all these things, talked to them, and yet she continued to fear. She continued to doubt. She continued to struggle with anxieties. I mean, it was incredible. And this journal is so real and so raw to say, oh my gosh, if this person here who the Lord used to create one of the greatest feasts of all time, the Feast of Divine Mercy, if she went through these struggles every day, who am I to think I'm different? But also, who am I to think I can't be a saint then? Because I mean, literally, she shows us, right?
Right, right. How beautiful. I wanted to spend a couple minutes talking to our listeners,
Hmm.
people who are struggling with pornography addiction or who love someone who is struggling with pornography addiction. There can be a lot of isolation there, a lot of disconnection, a lot of loneliness, and a lot of anger, honestly. I've spoken to thousands and thousands of people, Joseph, in 10 years of doing this. And they've prayed to have this struggle lifted, and God hasn't lifted it. So people get angry, they get isolated, they get upset. And I've spoken to thousands of men who, over these past 10 years, who have prayed with all their heart for God to lift this struggle. And He hasn't. And then they get really mad at God.
Hmm.
We're still called to be on this journey towards sainthood, even if we're mad at God, even if we feel like He doesn't hear us. What advice would you have to those people?
So I think there's a couple things. One is to remember the great Saint Paul, who said, "Three times I pleaded with the Lord to get rid of this thorn in my flesh. 3 times." And He did not. And He said, "My strength is sufficient for you. In your weakness, you are strong." And I'll never forget, I was struggling with not having some money that I wanted at a certain point in time, and I was very upset. And because I wanted to do things for the Lord. And the Lord gave me this really quick hit, and it was so clear. And He's like, isn't it great to be in my providence? And as soon as it came, it went. I was like, oh, don't go away. But it was just this very clear remembrance of there is no better place than to be in his providence, because we as human beings, the moment we start to think it's under our control, we start to often pull away from God. We start to
Yeah.
pull away. And so he will give us these crosses sometimes to make sure that we stay dependent on him if that's our particular persona, right? And so when you think about God as being not only omniscient, but outside of time, and he has created everything, he knows exactly what we need to get to heaven. And he will not give us one iota of a cross more than what he knows is going to somehow, he can weave together to get us to heaven, as long as we accept them, right? And there, that's always up to us, is to accept those crosses, right? In Jesus's divine mercy, Jesus said to Faustina that the vessel to access the well of mercy, which is infinite, is trust. Trust is the vessel from which to draw from my mercy. Okay. And so that's the muscle, that's the habit that we have to turn to, is that Jesus, I trust in you. That's why he had it. That's why he had those words put on that painting. Of all the things he could say to us, Jesus, I trust in you, right? And so the coupling of this, I think, is also something that thankfully we're starting to see this in the last couple of years, but prior to this, it was absent, is learning what spiritual warfare really is and how the devil operates. Okay. The tools and the availability for us, a book that I've been consuming that's been just illuminating for me, is the Liber Christo Manual, by Dr. Dan Schneider. And basically, he takes all the years of experience of seeing what they see in exorcisms and then says, how do we practically use these tools and weapons? Basically, what he does is he dissects how the devil gets to us, and helps us understand those things. So, yes, we're praying, but it's kind of like, I like Matthew Kelly one time said, okay, you pray, 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 but then you have to act. He says
Yes.
sitting there praying is like having the car and sitting in the car, but you got the car in park.
Right.
God can't steer a parked car. You got to actually go, and there's this kind of balance back and forth where, one of my favorite proverb that's come into my life is Proverbs 16:9. The mind of man plans, but God guides his steps. And therein lies this beautiful dance, this beautiful iteration of God wants us to use the gifts that we have. He doesn't want to, he will not do everything for us, because then he'd be violating the gifts he's given us. So we have this balance back and forth of pray, 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 but what am I doing? Okay. How do I get out of isolation? Well, one way to get out of isolation is create a personal litany of the saints. Take your favorite saints and every day pray that litany, and pray that you know they're there with you. So the next time you go to click on that website or that person, you know you have all these people looking at you. They're right there with you. Your guardian angel, they're there. They're real. They're there to help you. And it's like, so each of us has to find that path of what works for us in terms of, the resources and the tools that we have. But God may not take the underlying temptation away, because for some reason that's necessary for your sanctification in life, right? And you know, it's are you familiar with Dan Burke and the Avila Institute?
Yes, absolutely.
So Dan, they created what they call a root sin assessment. Okay, and to me, again, 3 years ago, I never even heard of a root sin, and all of a sudden I'm looking at this thing and going, oh my gosh. So this is why I confess the same things over and over again, because I'm not getting to the
You and
root of my
everybody else,
personal
brother.
problem, right? You know?
Exactly.
And so again, this is another practical step to say, what are the fundamental things that are making me most prone to this particular sin? Okay? And the three root sins are vanity, pride, and sensuality. Now, all of us have pieces of those, but there will be one that will be dominant, and when you discern it, it'll be an epiphany, like, oh my gosh, that just explains, that's why I do this, this, and this most often. Now that we know what it is, Now then, the action we're called to do is say, okay, well, what are the virtues I need to counter that? And how do I prayerfully and intentionally pursue one at a time, not 10 at a time,
It won't
and
work.
not,
Correct.
yeah, and not overnight, I'm going to do this one. But, oh, by the way, my virtue this year is generosity.
Mm.
And it's one I'm going to be studying and praying and looking at in different ways and with saints and readings and intentional actions to try and grow in it while I'm also learning about it, right?
Mhm.
So it's like you have to know yourself, know that you're never alone if you don't want to be, never, ever, right? And that not alone is not just simply being a cloud of witnesses. The saints so deeply want to be involved in our lives, and the angels. And St. Pio is just such a great advocate, for example, of our guardian angel, right? I mean, this man physically saw his guardian angel. Great blessing that most of us don't have. But he talks about how real they are in interceding for us all the time. But just like God, they'll never kick the door down. We have to let them in. And we have to say, I'm willing to let you in over and over again. Okay? Come on in. Come on in. Come on in. Otherwise, they'll stand at the door and knock, right? So there's this integration between, you know, prayer, action, the saints, and of course the sacraments, and continually integrating those.
Beautiful, beautiful, brother. Great advice. We just have about a minute, 2 minutes left. I just wanted you to tell us where can we get your books, Joseph? Warrior Prayer Manual and Becoming a Saint by Succeeding in Business.
Both of them are available on Amazon. And by the grace of God, I'm the only Joseph Valentic author out there. So if you go to Joseph Valentic as an author on Amazon, you can find me, or or by typing in either name,
Yep.
Warrior Prayer Manual or Become a Saint by Succeeding in Business.
Do you have a website, Joseph, where people can
I
learn
do.
more about you?
Yeah, the website is catholiccurator.com, and there's no spaces, no hyphens. It's all together. catholiccurator.com.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, again, all this information will be in the show notes from this episode. Joseph, thank you so much for coming on with us. Love to have you on again and continue the conversation.
Would love to, Jim, anytime. It's been a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, if this program or any of our products and services have helped you in any way, please consider becoming a donor. We couldn't do this work without the help of generous friends like you. May God bless your journey.